Hello, it's Kate Brown here from the Global Island Partnership, and welcome to this next part of this opening segment of the Island Sustainability Conference. And we're going to run through for the next hour, hear from a few islands and some others, and then you'll have the opportunity to ask questions both through the chat and to the moderator directly. So I'm going to moderate this next section. I also wanted to really say thank you to President Kreis and Governor Leon Guerrero for leading us in with really a very local example of what's possible. And a lot of what we're going to be talking about through this next segment is what are some of the responses, what were islands already doing, and how can we react now? I'll introduce each speaker as we go through. What we're going to do in this event, which is Island Platform on COVID-19 Responses, Sharing Support and Solutions, is talk through what islands are actually doing. But firstly, we have some housekeeping notes. We want to remind you that this panel is being recorded, so you'll be able to watch it later, and we'll also ask all of the attendees to send your questions to panelists through a chat box. So many of you, I can see, have been putting comments in the chat box. If you want so for the panelists specifically, put your questions in the chat box with a direct message to moderator, so in the name of who you send it to, and then any other comments and resources you can put into the chat box. So please feel free, if you would like to share something that's particularly relevant to this session, please put it into the chat box. In this panel, as I said, we're going to hear from early island leaders of the Local 2030 Island Network. And as we heard in the last segment, it was launched last year during the UN General Assembly. And the network is really focused on connecting these islands that are making some effort on implementing sustainable development in their islands. In the last few months, the network has actually pivoted to focus on providing a forum for islands to share solutions and support each other through this unprecedented global pandemic and economic catastrophe that we face as a planet. And our focus is really islanders helping islanders. So that's very much what you'll hear in the virtual platform. And I really, as UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres said in early April, finally, when we get past this crisis, which we will face a choice. We can go back to the world as it was before, or deal decisively with those issues that make us all unnecessarily vulnerable to crises. And our roadmap is the 2030 Agenda and the 17 Sustainable Development Goals. The recovery from the COVID-19 crisis must lead to a different economy. Everything we do during and after this crisis must be with a strong focus on building more equal, inclusive, and sustainable economies and societies that are more resilient in the face of pandemics, climate change, and the many other global challenges we face. What the world needs now is solidarity. With solidarity, we can defeat the virus and build a better world. That came out in April, but at the same time in our network, we also had really come to the same conclusion, and really with this focus on solidarity, and that islands working together can go much further. As a result, we've pulled together a group of partners focused in the short term on the virtual platform that will help islands on the solution, solidarity, and connections, and really create a space for sharing how to build back better in the face of the crisis, and with appreciation of the other long-term crises that face islands. And I would like to really acknowledge here the interim steering committee of the Local 2030 Islands Network, which includes everyone on the left-hand side of this column. And then we also have a set of virtual platform partners, which is ever growing, that are helping us to kind of both spread the word and connect islands both to the network and to the virtual platform. And we really thank all of them for their efforts. Without further ado, and I think you can Brianna has shared more information about the Local 2030 Islands Network in the chat box. But without further ado, I'd like to introduce our first speaker, who is a longtime colleague of mine, Dr. Spencer Thomas of Grenada. He's actually the Local 2030 Island Network's interim steering committee chair, and we really thank him for taking this important leadership role in the network. But he's also Grenada's ambassador and special envoy for multilateral environmental agreements and the country's lead negotiator for climate change and biodiversity. He's a former financial secretary and economic policy advisor in the Ministry of Finance in Grenada, and holds a doctorate in energy economics and master's and bachelor's degrees in economics and in telecommunications regulation and policy. He's also a board member of the Global Island Partnership, which I work for. So Dr. Thomas, you have the floor. Could you please put on your video so that we can see you? Thank you.
Okay.
Yes, got it. Perfect.
Thank you very much, Kate, for this kind introduction. Greetings to all. We are glad to have such a strong turnout for this second event of our Virtual Islands platform for the COVID-19 response. First, let me say thank you also to the government and the University of Guam for hosting this virtual conference on islands wisdom for a sustainable world, a sustainable global future. I am speaking in my capacity as the chair of the interim steering committee of the Local 2030 Islands Network, which is a coalition of islands and institutions that are committed to local efforts and solutions to advance the UN 2030 Sustainable Development Agenda and its Sustainable Development Goals. Islands are indeed taking innovative and groundbreaking actions to further the UN SDGs. And the premise of the network is that we have an opportunity to lead in the effort to actualize the SDGs at the local level, where the game is often won or lost. We benefit as islands community by coming together for more effective and sustainable development. And we can show the world the solutions that we have that work. We announced this network in New York during last year's United Nations General Assembly. And we have been working to make the network fully operational by this year's UNGA in September. Network members commit to 4 principles. 1, developing their own local goals. 2, strengthen public-private partnerships. 3, measuring sustainable development goals progress and taking concrete actions. In the meantime, in many aspects of our life now, COVID-19 has led us to modify our plans. In this time of unprecedented challenges and uncertainty, islands could use a space to come together for mutual solidarity, support, engagement, sharing, and solutions. While the immediate need is to secure lives and livelihoods, we also need to put in place plans for recovery and for resilience. We are all islands and are unique in many ways, but we have the same issues and the same problems. The problems and issues that we face are common. It will be very beneficial to hear how our colleagues are dealing with these challenges, what questions they are asking, and what they see as a pathway forward. We didn't intend for this platform to focus only on epidemiological questions, but to the impacts to sectors that are already dealing with longer-term sustainable challenges. We circulated a questionnaire prior to our first session, and the responses made it very clear that in this global emergency, islands can still keep their eyes on the longer-term sustainability challenges. We believe also that we had some webcasts. We focused on the longer term challenges and how to get out of it. We also asking the questions how the crisis can be used, how this crisis can be used as an opportunity, both to strengthen our resolves to tackle some of the major issues that we are facing now. Issues like climate change, issues like ocean degradation, loss of biodiversity, unsustainable development, and how to recover from these in a sustainable manner. We launched our last web last week on the impacts of COVID on the tourism sector, which is devastating many of our economies in the short term. And where so many of us know that we need to put ourselves on a better and long-term sustainable path. And I echo the sentiments just made by your governor on this issue. The report on this webinar is available on our website. The large and enthusiastic turnout validated our proposition, and it was striking how many participants were eager to translate the crisis into opportunity. Today, we are going to hear from some of our colleagues involved in the platform and the Local 2030 Islands Network about the challenges and plans for the future. Let me just take 1 minute in closing to just bring a perspective from Grenada. In Grenada, as we reel under the continuing state of emergency with the lockdown that we have been going on for weeks now, as we seek to address the loss of biodiversity, as we seek to prepare our national determined contributions in response to the Paris Agreement, and as we continue to reel under socioeconomic constraints of fiscal imbalances, high external debt, unemployment, the closure of the tourism industry and other productive sectors, the loss of livelihoods, etc., etc. As we seek to do all of this, we are reminded of a very active 2020 hurricane season, which begins in a few weeks' time. This network of islands, therefore, is indispensable to our journey and is critical for forging the alliances and solidarity to build the national resilience necessary to address our development needs in the context of the Sustainable Development Goals, and to ensure that we fortify islands' practices and responses to those external threats. So I want to stop here and thank you very much for this opportunity to introduce Local Islands Network to you, but it is very important in my view, and it is a very critical wheel in our response going forward to whatever crisis that we might face in the future. So thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you so much, Dr. Thomas. You have really hit it out of the park with those remarks. Thank you. We're going to move now from the Caribbean over to the Pacific, to Hawaii, and I'd like to introduce Celeste Connors, who is the Executive Director of Hawaii Green Growth. She was formerly the Director for Environment and Climate Change at the National Security Council and National Economic Council in the White House, where she helped shape the administration's climate and energy policies, including the Sustainable Development Goals. Prior to joining the White House, she was a diplomat in Saudi Arabia, Greece, and Germany, and was a faculty member at the Johns Hopkins University School of Advanced International Studies. She is a senior fellow at the East-West Center and also a board member of the Global Island Partnership. She grew up in Kailua, Oahu in Hawaii, and I'd like to ask her to take the floor.
Thank you so much, Kate, and aloha, everyone. Greetings from Hawaii. I also want to thank the governor and the University of Guam for just hosting an extraordinary summit. Really delighted to be part of this real demonstration of unity of island economies, and excited about the launch of the COVID platform and the Local 2030 Island Network. Hawaii Green Growth, Local 2030 Hub, together with GLISPA, serve as the secretariat for the Local 2030 Islands Network. And island economies, really like other islands, benefit from thousands of years of systems thinking through sustainable resource management. Spencer shared the network's 4 principles, which are really important. It's a political commitment, which we saw today. Public-private partnerships and the ability to measure progress so we know if we're achieving our goals. and implementing concrete actions. These have been integral to providing the framework that allows Hawaii to pivot in response to the COVID-19 challenges. I also just want to congratulate Guam on the launch of Guam Green Growth, and Hawaii Green Growth is so delighted to be working together with them and really building a drumbeat around green growth. And as we were talking about green growth before the panel, I was reminded how green growth is inherently an economic recovery strategy. By way of background, it was the leaders of the Organization of Economic Cooperation Development, or OECD, in 2009, as a result of the financial crisis, in a statement that they agreed to strengthen their efforts to pursue green growth strategies as part of their response to the current crisis and beyond, acknowledging that green and growth can in fact go hand in hand. And they committed at that point to encouraging green investment and sustainable management of natural resources, to use efficient and effective climate policy mixes, including through market-based mechanisms and regulations and other policies. Now, what was interesting is that this was further embraced by the leaders of the Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation during their meeting in Honolulu in 2011. And there, the leaders actually committed to advancing their shared green growth objectives. They agreed then that they must and can expose the region's economic and environmental challenges by speeding up the transition to a low carbon economy in a way that actually increases energy security and creates new sources of economic growth and employment. So again, green growth is inherently an economic recovery strategy against the backdrop of COVID. It's important that we recall this as we're embracing and celebrating the launch of Guam Green Growth. And it was from this meeting in APEC actually that Hawaii Green Growth emerged as a public-private partnership focused on implementing a green growth economic development and sustainability plan for Hawaii. In fact, we were just on a call this morning with members of the Sustainability Business Forum that we chair in Hawaii. It's a group of 24 Hawaii-based CEOs that are committed to these triple bottom line outcomes and building community resilience, focused on environment, social governance, or ESG issues. And so COVID-19 has seen a renewed focus of our business leaders on those ESG principles. To share a little bit about the Aloha Plus Challenge, the Aloha Plus Challenge is grounded in host culture and island values, or He Nohona Ai Oia. It's a commitment to 6 consensus-based statewide sustainability goals and has received unparalleled political support. The state legislature passed the Aloha Plus Challenge resolution in 2014. Our local initiative actually predates the UN SDGs, which were agreed in 2015 by all member states of the United Nations. The governors in Hawaii, the governor and the mayors, the Office of Hawaiian Affairs, our congressional delegation, and the local state legislature all signed a joint commitment to renew their commitment to the Aloha Plus as a local framework to deliver against the SDGs last year. So what makes this all possible, these goals and the implementation? I mentioned that Hawaii Green Growth was launched in 2011 following APEC. It is a public-private partnership committed to advancing economic, social, environmental goals. This is a snapshot of some of our partners. You can see the diversity of the partnerships in there. And what we actually do regularly is we convene statewide public and private sector partners to identify joint actions, including shared measures, policy priorities, projects, and innovative financial mechanisms to drive the implementation of our goals. Actually, last year, as part of the Local 2030 initiative launched by the Deputy Secretary General of the United Nations, Hawaii was recognized as a Local 2030 hub, tasked and asked the scaling Hawaii's model in a locally and culturally appropriate way to other island economies. And again, what we see with Guam and what is remarkable with Hawaii and our other island partners, it's really local solutions that are being scaled to deliver against the SDGs rather than a top-down approach. To the point that Spencer made earlier, one of the principles is how do we know where we're going if we don't know where we came from? How are we measuring what matters? And so an ongoing consultative process that we lead, which informs the Aloha Plus Challenge dashboard, is right here in this slide, and it tracks progress on all 6 goals. The dashboard itself was developed over 3 years, a consultative process across our entire state with the input of over 500 statewide stakeholders. And so in Hawaii and elsewhere, COVID-19 pandemic has caused disruption at the scale of a natural disaster while not yet disrupting physical infrastructure. So leading not only to a public health crisis, but an economic crisis that has affected our supply chains, our tourism economy, travel, business, and social activities. So the outbreak has revealed both vulnerabilities and strengths in Hawaii's ability to withstand this crisis. In response, if you look at our Aloha Plus Challenge dashboard right now, you can see the spotlight on COVID-19. We're tracking metrics on the state of Hawaii's resilience and adaptive capacity in the face of this crisis. So over here, you can actually see how well Hawaii is able to slow the outbreak through social distancing. Also here, how communities in Hawaii have responded with Aloha through volunteerism, virtual volunteerism. Hawaii's public health preparedness is also reflected here, as well as a case study of the 2008 financial crisis and its impacts on islands in Hawaii in particular. So the dashboard, together with an ongoing convening of Hawaii's hubs of 3 working groups in our business forum, will inform the recovery and the implementation of projects aligned with Principle 4. So I'll stop there now. I look forward to a rich discussion with our colleagues. Hawaii is so delighted to be part of this, and we really want to congratulate Guam and other partners. Thank you. Mahalo.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Celeste, for sharing that. And I also wanted to acknowledge, since we're in a conference in Guam, that the Aloha Plus Challenge was actually, even in the name, inspired by the Micronesia Challenge, which is the challenge and launched in 2006 across Micronesia by Micronesian leaders focused on a set of conservation and finance goals, and which is coming to, in 2020, to its endpoint and is reframing itself for future activity and has been very successful. So there's some kind of great story linkage between islands here. So, and that's awesome. I'd like now to introduce Honorable Joshua Tenorio, the Lieutenant Governor of Guam. He's the 10th elected Lieutenant Governor of Guam and has served a number of roles in government, including as Deputy Chief of Staff to the Governor, the Chief of Staff and Senior Policy Advisor in the Guam Legislature, and Legislative Assistant in the US House of Representatives. Among many roles, he has led disaster response and recovery efforts as the Governor's authorized representative to the Federal Emergency Management Agency for a range of typhoons, and also the 2001 earthquake. He brings experience from the private sector in Guam's construction, media, and automobile industries, having served most recently as Vice President of Guam Autosport. And he has a range of other roles, as we can see here in the territory. I'm very happy to give you the floor, Lieutenant Governor Tenorio.
Half a day. So I just wanted to thank everybody for attending, and I think the points that I wanted to emphasize, coming off of some of the remarks that Celeste made, one of the UN development goals is partnership, and we see this as a partnership amongst like-minded governments, NGOs, people. And I think that especially now that we're dealing with this COVID crisis, I'm real confident that island communities are able to respond and move things forward in a new normal much faster than others would. And so the reason that Guam, the government of Guam, decided to embrace this movement and to join the network really was to try and align what the reality is of Guam and Micronesia versus what we've been traditionally seeing. Of course, Guam does not have a seat at the United Nations. We are part of the insular area of the United States. But in reality, we are the hub of communications, education, research, and commerce in Micronesia. We play an active role, and Guam should be playing an active leadership role in the area of climate change and in the area of adopting and embracing the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. And so we see this, and I think one of the other things I want to mention is, I think the leadership that the governor and I provide includes empowering change agents. And that's what we did with the University of Guam Center for Island Sustainability, and what we continue to do to try and, from the bottom up, encourage and empower change agents, both individuals, nonprofits, and sectors in the government, to lead change and lead to improvements. Like other islands, we face challenges in food security, and our governor spoke about that. But very basic issues, clean water, solid waste, making sure that we have goals to increase education achievement, to lower involvement in criminal justice, to have better health outcomes, especially for those that are indigenous, who are often the ones that have the worst health outcomes. And so the Guam Green Growth strategy and the government of Guam strategy is to align exactly what we're doing in the agencies and with the nonprofit world and individuals and drawing their support to the 17 Sustainable Development Goals that we've decided to embrace. And so I just want to recognize Dr. Kreis and Dr. Shelton for agreeing to facilitate this effort with our leadership. We were able to convene in a very positive way several months ago, identifying goals that we're willing to adopt and measure our progress in reaching those goals. This partnership, by the way, with Hawai'i Green Growth, we are looking forward to adopting and incorporating a lot of their approaches in measuring the progress that they've set out to do in Hawaii, and use that framework and metric to really account for our efforts and to focus our efforts to meet the goals, but really to improve the outcomes and the situation in Guam. And so the other thing I wanted to mention is that let's not forget that native or traditional science and technology caused the Pacific Islands to be populated. It was the superior navigational experience of the Pacific Islanders, and especially the Micronesians, that were able to populate the vast Pacific at a time when we are compelled to use this form of technology. We must use this form of technology to tap on our inherent knowledge base in our traditions in order to inform what really works in an island. And so I want to just encourage people to follow this movement. I encourage other island governments, despite their political status, to join the network. And I would invite the nonprofit world and those individuals who are willing to be change agents to join this movement. And now is the time. We have a new normal. There are a lot of uncertainties, but as islanders, we know we always come together and we find the solutions that best fit our own societies. And so I'll turn it back to the panel. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Just waiting to get unmuted. That was wonderful. Thank you, Lieutenant Governor Tenorio. Indeed, I think much of this network is based on this idea of both the traditional knowledge and the knowledge we had previously, but also what islands are discovering as we face this crisis. And so we want to make sure that we're able to share that. With that, I'd like to move to our next speaker, which is Casey Brown. She's the Vice President for Policy and Strategic Initiatives at the UN Foundation, where she works on policy issues across the organization, including new trends and opportunities. This is such as this. She has helped stand up special initiatives such as the Business and Sustainable Development Commission and the World Benchmarking Alliance. She had other roles earlier, including as Chief of Staff to the US Special Coordinator for the Sustainable Development Goals, and has worked at the State Department previously. Thank you very much for joining us today, Casey. You have the floor.
Thank you so much. Thank you, hosts, for having me. And I just want to say welcome from my home to yours too. You may very well see my children running around in the background. I apologize, but this is also the new normal. So, as we've heard from the other panelists, including just previously, islands, I think, really are the microcosm of the best that humanity has to offer. And as the video at the outset of this session laid out, islands are also not isolated. You're pushing the frontiers of sustainable development, resilience, and climate action, and you're bravely asking and encouraging other countries and actors to do the same. I think just last week, we saw a group of small islands stand up and recommit to climate action in the midst of this global pandemic, and really saying we need to address the urgency of the now and the protection of our planet in the future. So we need to be seeing more of that as we're looking ahead. But also, as the governor laid out, we know that this pandemic exposes and exacerbates the vulnerabilities and inequalities of the world, and that is especially acute in some of these small island states, and really it compounds these challenges. So as we've heard today, it's really important that we're seeing islands coming together, supporting one another, learning from one another, innovating from one another, creating green growth strategies together from one another, and collectively facing the challenge that is at our doorsteps of this COVID and global pandemic now, and also preparing to build back better. That's why the United Nations Foundation was so honored to be a founding partner of this Local 2030 Islands Hub. We truly believe that locally driven solutions are crucial for building this more just, sustainable, and resilient world. And Kate provided this very powerful quote at the outset from the Secretary General about the imperatives of solidarity, which is so true. The UN Secretary also really believes so strongly in the power of local action to achieve these sustainable development goals. And so he wanted to create something that lifted up, celebrated, and use local efforts and actions as models to help us to advance these goals over the next decade. And that is why Local 2030, the Local 2030 Network was created, and Local 2030 Islands Hubs is a crucial member. Since this pandemic, the Local 2030 hubs have started coming together virtually to also share lessons and to figure out how to reorient and band together during this health crisis, which is so important. So all to say, we are so honored and proud to work with you, to learn from you, and to figure out how to deepen these kinds of partnerships as we're going forward. So thank you so much, and we look forward to this continued cooperation.
Thank you so much, Casey. And it's been really great working and learning from what not just islands, but what others are doing in terms of addressing the sustainable development challenges, and now with the layer of COVID-19 response on top of that. We have now a respondent who is going to speak, and I'd like to call on Jessica Robbins, from the director of the Tasmanian Way in Tasmania, to give us a short remark.
Thank you so much, Kate, Guam, and the entire island family. It's lovely to join in from Tasmania, a little bit colder down here. I really wanted to thank you all for your dedication, though, to really putting resilience and green growth front and centre as the true goal in recovery from this pandemic. Recovering to a previous state is really not enough. We need to take what this crisis has shown us and really harness that moment of unity and momentum to recover much stronger. So here in Tassie, we're really at the starting point in taking our first steps in our journey to recovery and resilience. The burning question for us is, how do we build on a strong foundation of our local food systems, our 90% renewable energy and social support systems to really build a much stronger, more resilient and vibrant future? One that's based on collaboration and cooperation is what islands really demonstrate to us. So the Tasmanian Way has very much been inspired by Hawaii and what you're doing there, by the Micronesia Challenge, and we will really be focused on bringing Tasmanians together to figure out how we can best answer this question. We're really enthusiastic to learn and share from what other islands are doing as we move forward on this path, and really see the Local 2030 Island Network and Global Island Partnership is really critical and vital to this happening. So we're really looking forward to becoming more involved in this journey, and congratulations to Guam and for hosting this incredible conference. We really, really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Jessica. And we're really like to welcome Tasmania, which is obviously part of Australia and the southern part of the Pacific, into this group of islands working together. So welcome. I'm now going to acknowledge that there is a lot of great questions and comments in the chat box. And so we really thank everyone for putting those forward. We want to actually give the, add some of these. So I would like to ask all of our panelists, and I'll call on you one by one, to think about, to give us the answer to kind of how this virtual platform and working with other islands and being involved in this network can support your island in recovering from COVID-19 and achieving sustainable development in the long run. So I will ask Spencer if you could give an answer to this question.
Thank you very much, and thank you, Kate. I want to answer this question by just giving a brief example of what happened in the past. In 2006, I was at a meeting in Curitiba, where the Micronesian Challenge was launched. And a few years later, inspired by that launch of the Micronesian Challenge, the Caribbean Challenge was launched. And I believe this is the example of what I'm speaking here in terms of how we can learn from each other and to the betterment of all of us moving forward. I could also remember the Hawaiian Great Growth Initiative when it first came to the GLISPA agenda. And now today we are seeing that ecology and economy are not fighting each other, but they could work together. We also now seeing the other E, epidemiology, is also be consistent with moving forward. As we heard from the Placentia Dialogue, the health of the economy, the health of people, and the health of the environment can all work in concert with each other. So my point here is that we can learn from each other, we can be inspired by each other, and it can end up to the good for all of us and that of humanity.
Thank you, Spencer. And Celeste?
Just waiting to be unmuted here. Okay, great. I agree with what Spencer and others have said. You know, this is really islands inspiring other islands. For Hawaii to be part of this network and Hawaii Green Growth is absolutely that. It is that narrative arc of the Micronesia Challenge, inspiring the Caribbean Challenge, inspiring the Aloha Plus Challenge. And then I'm delighted to hear from our colleague, Lieutenant Governor, how then what Hawaii is doing through the Aloha Plus Challenge and the dashboard can in fact go back around and work on how we measure progress on a consensus-based way. So that's one, sort of three things. This idea that together as islands, we are as powerful as any major economy and have a strong voice. And if islands have solutions, scalable solutions, we are compelled through these networks, like the Islands Network, to share these solutions to scale them because our very existence depends on that. So we're very committed, very motivated, we are compelled to act. The third thing I would say is just who better to lead this movement in a post-COVID crisis than island youth. And so I'm so inspired by what we heard from the president of the university and others, that it is the youth on islands that inherently understand sustainability, inherently understand the connection between ridge to reef and everything in between, and people to nature. So I would really love to see, for Hawaii at least, this network uplifting island youth. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Celeste. And Lieutenant Governor, what would you like to contribute?
I think I wanted to maybe point to one alliance or partnership that has already worked during the crisis. There's a very strong collaborative amongst the Pacific, or at least the Micronesian and the US affiliated Pacific Island public health officers. And so we are considered a regional testing facility, and early on, and to a limited extent now, we have been processing and doing some of these COVID tests for everybody else in the Micronesian region, except for the Marshalls, which are doing it with Hawaii. But that framework, that very strong collaborative framework that has been built up for many years by the public health officers, also allow us to address regional issues. I wanted to go back to the reason why I came to the launch rather than the governor last year was we just had experienced a dengue outbreak on Guam. And for those of you that are monitoring public health and climate change, you'll know that dengue fever is a public health concern that has been escalated by climate change, especially here in the Southern Hemisphere, the lesser developed countries. So that kind of sharing and that kind of data exchange and really just sharing the data on illness and public health issues help us make decisions and facilitate some decisions about opening up. Something I want to maybe telegraph in the future, we're talking with the Northern Mariana Islands already about maybe establishing a travel bubble within the Mariana Islands already. You know, you can see that happening in different regions around the world, where as soon as they see some positive public health data, they start trying to expand the area of travel. And obviously the first place that we would probably look to are just within the Mariana Islands. And then the last thing I wanted to say, and I didn't get a chance to talk about this I forgot to mention it, is let's not forget that the first goal of the UN Sustainable Development Program is eliminating poverty. And I feel that all of the islands, because of mass tourism and the introduction of technology and all sorts of things, has created or has not resulted in shrinking of the socioeconomic divide within the islands. Many places have a widening divide between those that have and those that haven't. And one thing I think that we can collectively do in this framework and within the region and the world is remembering that all of this, again, is a lot of this work should be based on trying to eliminate poverty and address those things. So that's what I had to offer.
Thank you so much, Lieutenant Governor. That's awesome. Casey, what would you like to share?
Sorry, just coming off mute here. Not as an islander, but as a partner. Really, I think three things, just picking up on the good interjections already. One is just that you're really on the front lines of trying to tackle these interlinked challenges and these very acute interlinked challenges, whether it be on development issues, health issues, climate issues. Two, I think demonstrating and showcasing strength and solidarity. I think in today's climate, you can see that there is a need for showcasing that this global community can in fact work together and can do so in a positive and empowering way to show that we can address this crisis, and also we can work together to build a better future for our children. And third, I think that having an opportunity to connect real innovations and solutions of these very specific efforts to create this crescendo of solutions at the global level, frankly, to demonstrate that whether you're talking about negotiating on climate change again, or there's supposed to be a food systems summit next year, that really you have solutions, innovations, and are also trying to work together to be very honest about the challenges that are at hand. And so that is what makes me quite motivated and inspired to work on this initiative and with you all.
Awesome, thank you, Casey. We're going, a couple of things. One, we have a great team working behind the scenes, kind of pulling together many of your questions and some of the themes that are coming through both the Q&A box and the chat box. As you can see on screen, we're asking people to put into the chat box what challenges your island are facing and whether you have bright spots to share in addressing these challenges as we go through the next few minutes. And we'll include that in the in what comes out of this discussion. We really appreciate that there is a lot of things out there that people are doing that may not be having the same profile as what we've been talking about, and we really want to give an opportunity to learn what some of those things are. In terms of some of the themes that we see coming through what all of you, and thank you very much for this, have been contributing, include the importance of food security. This is a theme that has been brought up in every single conversation I've had since COVID-19 happened with anyone, whether it's a person here in my local town in New Zealand or an island leader or people working on islands, and obviously a very important issue. The role of women leadership on global sustainability has come up a number of times through the chat books. The issue of youth leadership, Ridge to Reef environmental stewardship initiatives, and we've heard a few of those, and really the shared challenges to islands from COVID-19 affecting tourism, economy and trade, and the opportunity for new sustainable economic recovery pathways are some of the things that this very astute group of participants in this webinar have brought to the fore. And so thank you very much for that. On the issue of tourism, as was indicated earlier, we had a webinar on tourism last week, and I encourage you to look to, you can watch the recording of that. There was some really interesting issues brought up. And I think some of those issues are very similar between this panel and that panel. And it comes down to people, how we support the people in islands, how we connect those the people in islands to learning from each other and to the feeling that they're not in it alone. I'd like to also indicate that I'd like to actually get a very short comment from each of our speakers. If you can give a 30-second to 1 minute final remark, and then we'll close out the session with some announcements of future webinars. So I will start actually at the end with Casey, if you would like to give your final remarks of 30 seconds to a minute, just one final thing you'd like us to take away.
Just that we can't learn enough from you all. And so want to really thank you for your time. And I think that continuing to lift up what you're seeing as successes and how we can be working across societies and across boundaries to address these common challenges that we have. We want to hear from you. So we look forward to working with you.
Awesome, and thank you. And we really appreciate your efforts to amplify the voice of islands into the global community. So thank you for that, Casey. Lieutenant Governor Tenorio, what are your final closing remarks?
I'd just like to point out that with this global crisis, it really compels us to understand that we are moving into a new normal. And when there is a big situation like this, I would say that it creates pathways for innovation. And I'm very confident that we have individually in our island and collectively as a movement, a lot of talent that needs to be harnessed and needs to be empowered. And I'm looking forward over the next few weeks and months to seeing new people, new organizations come into this public square and provide new and better ways in this life, the new normal of life that we will be looking forward to.
Thank you, Lieutenant Governor. Very wise words indeed. Celeste?
No, thank you, Kate. I think really this comes down to leadership and partnerships among many things we heard today. And, you know, COVID really underscores the need and the value to work together. We, as a co-secretariat member, we welcome everybody's participation in this. And together, islands can really and truly find and scale those innovative solutions that can help everybody out of this crisis. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Celeste. And Spencer, the final words.
Well, I think I will echo that was just been said by Celeste. It's about island leadership, in my view, on the global sphere. I think I could give you two very quick examples. One in the past. I think the Paris Agreement, which we are touting now as the pathway for climate change, it would not have been possible without a small island in the Pacific, Marshall Islands, taking a very firm, strong leadership at the highest level of government. And I think I could go on record with this one. And now we are seeing Belize changing the agenda for going forward with respect of climate change and ambition that is required with the last held Placentia dialogue. But I think my final word will echo from what the governor has indicated with respect to food security. I believe that islands can be a laboratory for examples of the food security issue. When I grew up, they had a saying, eat what you grow and grow what you eat. I think this could be exemplified on islands more than any place in the world. So we can really give the world some issues with respect to food security. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. And thank you to all of our panelists. This was a very quick and high level snapshot of what they're doing, and we will be very happy to share more information of specific examples. We have another virtual convening on the 14th of May at 6 p.m. UTC, and that's focused on economic recovery and resilience. So this panel today was really the first opportunity to hear about the network and the virtual platform. This next one is really much more a deep dive into what a number of islands are doing in terms of economic recovery and resilience from COVID-19. We are confirming speakers, and we really look forward to inviting all of you to join in 2 weeks with us. We really wanted to thank the University of Guam and the government of Guam for working together with us on this first webinar, and as part of the Center for Island Sustainability Conference, and also to all our partners, to all the speakers. Wonderful. I'm really inspired. I think hearing the situation of people dealing with some of these issues is amazing, and I thank all of you for sharing so openly. I'm going to hand over, as Austin said earlier, that we will now have a half hour of networking. I will hand over to Lauren Swidell, who is the Guam Green Growth Coordinator in Guam, and she will take us through this next 30-minute session. Thank you, Lauren.